And we are live at the Venture to Victory podcast, where we look at the entrepreneurial journey from funding to exit. I'm Tim Tonella, your host, CEO of MatchStar Venture Search, and I'm so pumped today. Kevin Surace is in the house, and Kevin's an amazing guy, and I have to tee this up with a little bit of a long introduction because he certainly deserves it. You know, Terrell and I first met Kevin when we were engaged to do a CMO, Chief Marketing Officer search for him at his groundbreaking Cleantech company called Sirius Energy that had raised over $150 million in venture funding and went on to win all types of awards and recognition, including they're part of Deloitte's Fast Growing Companies in America list and the best companies to work for. They won accolades and awards for Product of the Year. And if we step back a little bit into the 90s, at General Magic, Kevin was one of the inventors of the modern human-like voice user interface that was kind of the early virtual assistant that was used for services like GM's OnStar system. And I remember one of my best friends, Kevin, his dad had just got a car. He says, you gotta come go for a ride. The car talks back to you. And I was thinking of like the Knight Rider show with David Hasselhoff. And back then, it was the coolest thing. We take it for granted today in our AI world, but you were really a pioneer going back, several decades. So that was pretty incredible. Kevin went on at General Magic to help drive revenues from 50 million to well over $1 billion market cap. And the way I like to think of Kevin was the words Renaissance man. If you think about technology in Silicon Valley, people are so focused on the one thing that they're doing. They say, go along with the thing that you're good at. But I think you've kind of defied the odds. So I'm going to actually read off some things about Kevin because I could never memorize so many accolades. And then you get an idea why I'm teeing it up this way. So Kevin was in 2009 Inc. magazine's Entrepreneur of the Year award winner. He's literally the main guy on the cover of the magazine. Pretty cool. He's built multiple companies. He's built multiple companies from ground zero to 1 billion plus valuations. And this number's crazy. He's been awarded 94 patents, at least that I know of. And was one of the first guys to help introduce AI to the mainstream tech world in 2017. Kevin's been a leader in clean tech. I guess today it has lots of different names, climate tech, sustainability. But he had a pioneering approach to building carbon neutral products with Sirius materials that warped into Sirius Energy. He's considered by some as the father of the virtual assistant, which we just touched on with OnStar. He's also known as a futurist and has been a notable TED and TEDx speaker. But he's also a music and film producer. Many of his products have been at performing arts shows and musical theater, including Nicole Henry's Broadway and more. And if you follow Kevin on Facebook or LinkedIn, like I do, you'll see that he's pretty much a world traveler, and you see him speaking and meeting with celebrities and kind of global players all around. And Kevin's really a guy who's made an impact on some of the most important challenges that we face with the planet today. I've always studied literature. And for those of you that are familiar with the famous British author Rudyard Kipling, he wrote many things, but the famous poem, If, there's two lines that remind me about Kevin. And that was, if you can talk with crowds and keep your virtue, or walk with kings nor lose the common touch, to me, that would be the definition of today's Renaissance man. And that is Kevin. And again, I'm so pumped, Kevin, that you're in the house, and welcome to the Venture to Victory pod.
Tim, thank you so much. That is the longest intro on 50-something podcasts. Thank you. We've known each other, so it's very kind of you. Look, we all try to do our bit in this world and, learn and take some golden nuggets, as they say, and drop a few golden nuggets, I hope, along the way. And that's all I'm trying to do.
Well, that's fantastic. So with that intro and all those different things that you've accomplished over so many decades, I would step back and say, what on earth were you like as a young boy or a young kid? I mean, were you the kind of guy that was like taking apart things, putting them back? Were you focused on music and the arts? Like, what was a young Kevin like? How did you get from boy to man with that background?
So yes, I was a musician, and I marched at the time in the National Championship High School Marching Band at West Genesee, New York. I grew up playing drums from 5 years old. Went on to essentially get a minor in music as well. Learn a lot more about music, although most musicians are 1,000 times better than I am. But I've loved music and musical theater, and I've been active in musical theater. But we'll talk about as a kid, I was active in musical theater. I got to do shows like Camelot when I was young and others.
Oh my gosh.
But on the other side, yeah, it was my dad worked for GE, General Electric, audio electronic products. And at the time, that was the #1 brand of audio products. And audio was a huge category. That was tape recorders and radios and boom boxes and sort of all those things, right? And so I grew up with that stuff in the house. But I was so into electronics, I taught myself how to take things apart and fix them. And so I would take stuff apart that was broken. I'd fix televisions. I'd, get new tubes. They were all tubes at the time, so you have to put new tubes in or whatever the case was. And so I was living at Radio Shack all the time and seeing what new came in today and knew the guy who was behind the counter, right? So I was so interested in that. I did end up going to school. I could have gone to school for music or musical theater or music theater direction or music direction, but my dad smartly said, you can do that, but you should get an engineering degree. That will pay off well. And then if you want to do that on the side as much as you want, you can. But I'm not paying for it. So go get an engineering degree. So I did. Manchester Institute of Technology. And I have, been fortunate to have an okay career in Silicon Valley.
So your dad gave you a little bit, I don't know if I'd say inspiration, sounds like more of a little bit of a shove in one direction. Was there anyone or any heroes? Because, we do go back to those earlier days of the Silicon Valley based on both of our ages. Was there anyone that kind of inspired you to kind of move into tech, that guys that became kind of the legends that they are today? Like you always hear about the Steve Jobs and Wozniak in the garage.
So, over the years, I got to do business with and meet and work with people like, including Steve and certainly Bill Gates and others. And Bill was an inspiration, no question. Steve, an inspiration in different ways. The early people of Silicon Valley were Charlie Spork, who started and ran National Semiconductor with an inspiration. Not that we would run companies exactly the same way today, but you certainly looked and got to see what they did to build multi-billion-dollar companies. Of course, in those days, the guy who started Atari, I'll think of his name, and it's Nolan Bushnell, who again, I've gotten to know over the years. Nolan, when he sold his company to Warner Brothers or something, he sold Atari to, and the funniest thing, and sold it for a couple $100 million, which was a huge exit at the time. And I think he made $30 million. And all of us said, $30 million, oh my God, who could make? Of course, that's zero today compared to what people are making, right? Which is billions.
Well, even back then, if you index the dollar forward, it's probably around 100 million. So it was
right.
Nothing to shake at. Yeah, for sure.
Nothing to shake at. But the numbers have changed, right? Because the public markets today will accept a much larger outcome and a different kind of outcome for things that are growing fast. So yes, I had my heroes, but look, I came to Silicon Valley. I was 21 or something like that. Working in a semiconductor company, and said, all right, well, I have to bring my work ethic that my dad taught me, which is, not everyone younger is going to agree with me on this one. It's work your tail off. First of all, learn at a big company. Don't go start something. Learn at a big company. There's too much to learn there, including things that are wrong, including the red tape to get anything done, right? So
would that apply today, Kevin, for young aspiring entrepreneurs or coming out of a Y Combinator or something like that?
Go learn at high quality, good companies, right?
Yeah.
If you go to Apple and spend 5 years there, whatever job you're in, you walk out, you know more than you could have ever learned in school. And you will need that to start your company. So it's not that people don't leave school, start a company, and are successful. 1 out of, 10,000 is, or pick your poison somewhere in the 1 out of 1,000 and 1 out of 10,000. It's that you will have more tools in your tool belt. You will know more people. You will have more experience. You will have touched finance, you will have touched engineering, you'll touch product, you'll touch marketing, and you have touched all of that by being in a company. And also you will have learned what worked for them, what processes work that you can take with you, and what processes you will never want to take with you. And those are equally important. So I think, yes, you should go do that. You should work at a larger, high quality company, learn from that. And during that time, find some pain points, not at that company, but pain points out there. What I like to tell people, they say, how'd you get 94 worldwide patents? So, well, I wake up and I go, there's a real pain point here. So what might that pain point be? I and my team, I had the vision for, and then my team at General Magic developed the virtual assistant. And all those patents got licensed to Apple for Siri and Microsoft. And Amazon for Alexa and everything else. And you go, how did you come up with that? Well, the advent of cell phones, not smartphones, had just started, and the internet had just started. So people started having flip phones. It's the mid 90s, late 90s, and there was the internet. And I had no way to combine them while I was driving. Like, I had emails, I had, believe it or not, faxes. I had all kinds of data coming to me, and I had a calendar, right? I had Outlook, I had a calendar, and I had no way for anyone to do anything but call me and then say, Tim would call me and say, Kevin, I'd like to get on your calendar for Tuesday. I go, I'm driving. I don't know.
Did you have the giant Motorola phone that was like kind of docked into the center?
That's why I started. Yeah, actually, my first cell phone was bigger than that. My first cell phone was not portable. It sat in the trunk of the car.
Oh my!
The transmitter was in the trunk, and the handset was here. That was a Novotel.
You could call in an airstrike with that, I believe, as well.
That was the late 1980s. It was Novotel on the AMP system. So the bottom line is, I was trying to solve a problem, and the problem was everyone needs access to their information, but they're driving, and the only thing you could do was talk. So I said, well, look, we can do Bluetooth to the car, and even before Bluetooth, you could just have the speakerphone on, and you could talk to your phone, and it could talk to you. So I could ask for my email, read my calendar appointments. What is my next appointment? Read my stock quotes, answer my phone for me, and she would answer your phone. Mary, her name was. We had 3 million people on there. And Mary would answer your phone and say, hi, I recognize you, Tim, from your number. Would you like to schedule an appointment with Kevin? And you'd say, yes, I need an hour on Tuesday. Well, it doesn't have that. How about these time slots? Like, we built that in 1998. It was far more capable than even what we have today. So they ended up getting licensed everywhere. And that was my first foray really in applied AI, which is different than making the core algorithms, right? But how do I take those home? But they're all tied to one thing that I've done throughout my career, which is I need to solve a real problem. And some advice, because this is sort of an advice podcast, right? Victory to victory. I want you to have victory. Let me tell you, you come up with an idea, and I know you're going to think it's the best idea. It's not the best idea unless everyone else thinks it's the best idea. It's nothing. And so get rid of that and say, what pain point am I solving for people who can pay me? I've seen a lot of people come up with they say, oh, this is a terrible pain point. I'm going to make it up. This is a terrible example. These poor people in this area are starving. I get that. And it is a pain point for government or for the church or for someone. I don't think you're going to build a business out of it, because you need people, especially early adopters, to pay a lot of money for whatever your service is.
Yeah.
And so whatever you come up with had better be able to support early adopters who are willing to write bigger checks than they will 3 years later. That is a winning business and a real pain point. When we developed, we developed soundproof drywall. I'm in a hotel. I'm listening to people on the other side of the room all night. I go, there's got to be a solution for this. I go and meet with builders. They go, I'm getting sued for noise in our condos and townhomes that we built. I go, there's got to be a solution for this. So I went to work on a solution, and I developed something called soundproof drywall that has sold billions of dollars today. And it's in hundreds of thousands of structures, right? And soundproof drywall stops sound going from one side to the other. Now it's like a $50 panel of drywall instead of a $10 panel of drywall. But labor-wise, it's nothing. You just put up a piece of drywall, and it can't be shorted out, and it just works. So these are the sort of things that, one recommendation is find real pain points where people are willing to pay real money, and you can build really big businesses.
Yeah. I've often heard it said that you want to find a market that's in search of a product and not a product that's in search of a market, which is another way
I love these solutions in search of a problem, right?
Yeah, right.
That's useless. No, right. I've got this great solution, but nobody has that problem. I see it all the time.
I kind of wonder today, though, where, we're in a different world today where you can start companies so inexpensively because of technology. So the barrier to entry is lower. And of course, the funding ecosystem, although it's never easy, is much, much larger, and it's global today. So I think a lot of people jump into something with an idea, figure I'm going to get some funding. They don't start with the 5 years at Google or Facebook or kind of cutting their chops and learning. They just kind of figure out, I'm just going to jump right into it. This is what we do today in 2024, 25 to be entrepreneurs. And so I think that part's changed a lot. I don't know if the success rates are higher or lower, under this model than they were before.
The stats are still pretty clear, but I'll tell you what has changed. So the stats are still relatively 1 in 1,000 startups that starts on a napkin and starts with your buddy or whoever it is, and 1 in 1,000 is going to have a big hit.
Yeah.
Once you take some okay funding, seed round or something, kind of 1 in 100. Once you get a real venture round, it's 1 in 10. Now, here's what's changed. We've got venture firms out there that have raised such large funds in the $5 to $10 billion range that they're playing a slightly different game now, in which case even the 1 out of 10 doesn't matter. And what I mean by that is if you have a real winner, they can be worth 500 billion today or $1 trillion. And so you're looking at OpenAI is worth, call it 150 to $300 billion today.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it'll end there, but that's what it's worth today. So if you sprayed and prayed your money as a VC and literally threw it out there and literally got rid of all 7 billion across 300 companies, and you had one that made it to 300 billion, you had 30% of that, let's say, you still paid back your fund 10x.
Yeah.
So that's what makes it a different time. However, what's not reported are all the other 300 companies that got funded and 299 of them turned into nothing, or 200 or 250 or 280, right? And so there is, I'd say, even a movement now to not care about the ones that die, because if it's not going to make the fund back times at least 3, I don't really care about the other stuff because you're nickel and diming, right?
Yeah. So you're taking basically bigger swings, more yardage to try to hit it over the fence, which is interesting because I think a lot of entrepreneurs, they may not totally view it that way. And they figure, hey, a single or a double isn't the worst thing, right? It's better than a failure. But the investors are looking at it from a different perspective. Like, I've got to raise another gigantic fund after this. I've got to show, right? I've got to show, internal rate of return that's higher than you could get in the standard equity markets. And the only way to do that is to swing for the fences, hit a biggie, and everybody else is the casualties of war, I guess. And that's the sad truth about the game you play.
So it used to be, well, first of all, there didn't used to be even $10 billion funds. But in a $10 billion fund, if you go, look, I've really grown this company and I think we're worth $100 million now. Even if they own 20% of that, they can't spend any time or give you any more money, with all due respect, for something that might end up exiting at 100 million, let's say, and they get 20 and they put in 10. 20 doesn't move the needle on 10 billion. What I need is $100 billion win or a $200 billion win to move the needle on 10 billion, right? That's what I got to have. So that's what's changed. And obviously there's smaller funds out there, and there's 4,500 venture funds today and an equivalent number of family offices. There is money out there. People are getting money, but don't misinterpret, hey, I got money, we're going to have a big company. No, even if you got venture money, it's 1 out of 10. It might even be 1 out of 20 today that really makes it big. And the rest, just dwindle by the wayside or die or get sold or whatever. So look, this is hard. It's a lottery ticket. And you not only have to be good, but you have to be not only good and lucky, I should say. You have to have the market timing so right to get those kind of big exits. And a friend of mine in Southern California did an analysis of all the companies they had funded. And in the end, it was all about market timing. In fact, the best teams versus the worst teams didn't do any better or worse.
You're kidding
the worst
me.
teams
Really?
with great true. The worst teams, he did this huge analysis. He said, these people are from Stanford and these people are from, I don't know, Kentucky. I'm not picking on Kentucky. Don't write to Tim and say, all right, North Dakota, whatever, wherever they're from, Nebraska. No, they're all good states. But the point is, he looked at all of that, and it actually, that did not affect the outcome. The only thing that affected the outcome was market timing. If you got the market timing right, that the demand was there at the time the technology could meet the market demand, you won. And if you missed the market timing, the smartest team still lost. They missed.
I think that's something a trend that you see in a lot of places. You see it in modeling. You see it with the film, right? The best film, depending upon when it's released, the time it's released, you never really know whether it's going to be a hit or a bust from a studio perspective. And I think sounds like the same thing with the timing aspect is certainly that for venture-backed tech. So interesting perspective. On that note, would love to pivot quickly because I know you've been a film producer, you've been a musician, not only in terms of producing plays and musicals, but you've been a musician from the time you were a young kid. That's a big part of your passion.
Yeah.
I'm really interested in your perspective on the connection or the intersection of creativity as it relates to both technology and music and the arts.
Mm-hmm. Well, look, I think, so there's left brain, right brain, right? And one of the things we found at RIT, I'm on the board of RIT, so I think this is salient, is that we started a few years ago we had a small music program and a little bit of performing arts, and we started offering a performing arts scholars program to give people a scholarship to attract them to RIT, to the engineering degree. You can't get a degree in music there. To an engineering degree where you could still have a minor or a concentration in music, but you'll get to do performing arts with literally something like 100 performing arts organizations within the campus, right? Orchestras and rock bands and jazz bands and steel drum bands and all kinds of singers and all kinds of things, and a lot of musical arts, perform musical theater on stage.
Yeah.
Here's the outcome of this going on. I want to say it's 8 years now. You know what the outcome is? The kids who come in through that program, even though they're an engineering degree, outperform and outgraduate with higher grades the students who didn't. Those who came in with performing arts, minor basically, right? That we'll call performing arts scholars for them, outperform those who did not. Now, this is super interesting because we have the data now. It's not an arguable, it's a knowable. So if you come to RIT and you get your scholarship because you play guitar and you're going to play in some group, the chances of you outperforming the rest of your class is much higher than had you not come in with that guitar.
Okay. So is that a natural creativity aspect, or is that something that your brain evolves during those 4 years in undergrad?
Well, some people say that music is math, which of course it is, which AI is math, that everything in the end is math. And so, musical notes, in fact, in the end are kind of math. They're math that represents, essentially sound pressure levels, waveforms changing at a certain rate in the air, right? So I see the note A, it equals 440 hertz. That's just what, at least on a particular scale, it equals 440. That's representing the number 440, which is a vibration in air, so that here we can hear that note. So that's one way to look at it. Another way to look at it is just maybe they're a more well-rounded individual. Another way to look at it is they're used to performing in groups often, and so they didn't just play video games. They actually went and did things with other people. We don't know causality here, right? We don't know causality. We can attribute it that something happens when you are a musician or a singer and you've worked in groups and then you come in under that program, somehow you perform better overall on average. But causality would be tricky.
It could also be the collaboration aspect, because I was a musician too for many years. I was a rock guitarist in the 70s. A lot of people don't know that. And that's all I did in high school is play music. And as you know, as an artist, the way you collaborate musically is often different than a logic-based approach that you see in business. And you have to have patience and you have to be open to constantly experimenting and seeing how things can work together. So I don't know if that overall collaboration aspect is important too.
Look, I was in various bands, rock bands and jazz bands and all kinds of things, right? But you want to talk about hard, the National Championship Marching Band, it was back east, right? So if it was, we're out there practicing at the end of October, and in those days there would be snow.
Yeah.
And we still did our 3-hour rehearsal. Didn't matter how cold you were. And, you had 180 members of the band, and any one of them on the field, in the field show, doing something incorrect, a step incorrect, would take something away from our score. And so we were all dependent on each other to be as good as the next person or better.
Yeah.
And that's a very different thing. In fact, I would tell you, the gentleman that I was that was our percussion instructor and also the arranger for the band, who's still a friend. He's a absolutely terrific arranger of music, orchestrator of music, right? For marching bands and for orchestras and for choirs and everything. And his name is Nick Barada. And Nick really instilled something that I'm not sure everyone gets today, but it's like, hey, Kevin, we're in it to win and you're in it to be the best. Like, you're going to be the best, and we're here to win together, right? We're here to win together. Now, the winning's everything, but it was the late 70s. Winning was everything. So
yeah.
I mean, so look, I think actually a winning attitude is a very good thing. And it's important to lose and feel what it's like to lose. And it's important to do companies and get up and say, I lost that one, but I'm going to go up and start another one. It's okay. I knew a guy who did 13 companies before he hit it out of the park. And the first 12 were dogs, but he got up every day and says, I had a great attitude about it, right? So, but in the end, he wanted to win. He wanted to have the win, even if he didn't really need the money anymore. He just wanted the win. And so you have to want to win, and you have to be able to jump over whatever gets in front of you. You will run out of money at times. You will not be able to pay the bills. People will be screaming. You will hire bad employees, never from MatchStar, but from other recruiters. You will hire very
Thank
bad
you,
employees.
Kevin, for that.
You will hire good employees.
I've got your Venmo account. I'm sending the money right now.
It is how it works. It's $20 every time I say MatchStar. Isn't that what
you go? You're selling yourself cheap these days.
I'm going to pay you
at least 25.
No, I'm going to mention it 1,000 times, so it's going to work out.
Okay, yeah, death by paper cut.
Right.
Well, let me ask you. So, in your hiring decisions, as you kind of come to this realization over time, is that an attribute that you look at? If you have the data statistics that show you, if you go through a high tech or an engineering kind of program or process or education, and you bring that musical experience as part of that, and these are the stats that you're seeing out of Rochester, do you incorporate that into your hiring practice when you look at people that have that background? Does that matter to you?
Well, what happens is we all tend to hire people that we have something in common with. That's the truth. And I don't mean that, in a DEI sense, like, they have to be a certain race or any of that. What I mean is that, like, if someone comes to interview me and they also went to my university, we automatically have a connection. Oh, did you have this person? How did you like this? And what building? And there's just a different connection that starts a different conversation, right? And I think this is true with music too, because you've got things in common that you've got something to talk about. Whenever we interview someone and we go, I don't actually understand this person, and like we have nothing in common. So then you go, how could I possibly work with them as a team member, right, in my company? Because in the end, you could hire the very, very best person for the job, but if they don't get along with anyone and you don't get along with them, you're not going to get the best out of them, and they're not going to give you your best, and the whole thing goes down the tube. So look, I think music does come up. Certainly, it doesn't mean to, but we talk about that. We talk about films. We talk about Broadway. We talk about all kinds of things, and sometimes there's some overlap that's super interesting, and you go, I'm really going to enjoy this person, and they're qualified, and we checked 3 references, right? And we gave them a test. So I think, and even then, like whenever you're hiring a VP of sales, your chance of success, I think, is about 1 in 3, but because they're really good at selling you, and then they go to sell the product, and you go, they don't seem to sell the product, but they keep selling themselves. So so some of these are hard hires. They're just hard hires.
No, that's definitely for sure. I kind of feel on the sales side, looking back historically, even at someone's success, you never quite know what's going to happen in the future. There's so many attributes that you look for. I always say in hiring people in general, and even when I advise candidates, C-level candidates are looking for something new, I always tell them, start with the individual that you potentially work with. See at first if there's something you share in terms of principles or values, because if you're C-level executive, you're probably reporting it to someone that's got, let's say 20 to 30 years of experience, right? And so the arc of their life and what they believe in, their value system, their principles, those are close to the heart. And that doesn't really change because they've gone through life. And if you can connect on that basis where things are most important, you'll probably make that personal connection. If you can't find anything that way, then again, look for things that you have in common. You served in the military, you both play guitar, you both love musical theater, whatever it is.
And by the way, I would hire people who serve in the military 10 to 1. They come in and they go, yes, sir. I'm glad to be here, sir. I don't mean in a bad way. It's like, whoa, you are ready to well, how do you do this? I execute the plan. I must march over the hill. You go, okay, I'm going to get results from this person, right? They're going to march over that hill no matter what it takes. And if it's a 100-hour week, they're going to do it, right? Because they can't let anyone down because they're going into battle is how they look at it. That's a great skill. And I know a lot of people listening to that will not have brought that skill. I wasn't in the military myself, but I can tell you when you hire people who have been in the military, they bring that kind of, I follow and I execute. super interesting.
I'll tell you, Kevin, it's not the military, but from all the years that I followed with my daughter's marching band and all that, there is a military, they're not fighting a war, obviously, I'm not comparing it to that, but the standards, the level perspective, the discipline and focus that you see in marching bands, I think you get it there too. I mean, it's absolutely, like you said, you're staying out in the snow. Yeah, perfect formation, and that keeps on going on. So that's amazing. So look, Kevin, this has been amazing. I'd like to just end it with one thing, because we did talk earlier about how the odds of success, and we're not talking about odds of hitting a single or double, but really having the huge success that everybody dreams of, starting out young and being part of a unicorn that has an exit, goes public, or whatever that situation is kind of slim based on the data. I think you talked about 1 in 1,000. And then if you are able to get to a significant initial funding, let's say a 5-10 million plus Series A, it drops to 1 in 10. And, the institutional investors are looking at you as, we care about you, but if you're not going to, hit it over the fences,
we don't care that much.
Yeah, you could be a collateral damage. With all of that, for people that are thinking about taking that plunge into the entrepreneurial world, or for those, either the founders or the teams that are already there and they're crossing some of these typical hurdles that, early stage companies tend to hit, is there any single thing or two that you could advise them how to create that sustained desire to just push through it and keep on going?
Well, look, one of the things that's important is as soon as possible, stop spending investors' money and get that thing, that cash flow break even. Yeah. And once you do that, investors want to pour in, and then they'll say, go spend more on marketing, go spend more on sales. But the longer you are in a business that is, forever, and I know that people are going to say, well, OpenAI is going to lose $8 billion this year. That is a very, very unusual case. And there are some unusual cases. But
Amazon.
Like Amazon, who lost money for, 10 or 12 years. Yes, that's right. And Salesforce too. But so look, there are those outliers, and people will always, but you're not always going to be that outlier. You think you are. But look, even if you end up having a $200 or $300 or $400 million exit, that could be a great exit. And so the way you get there is just be very judicious. Cash is always king. There is a ton of money out there, but only for some, not for all. And I can tell you, keep cash as king, build a great business. A lot of these businesses, they're not successful till their 5th turn of their business plan. So turn that crank quickly. And then you find, oh, okay, now I've hit on, Slack famously was a game company, and nobody was playing their games. And they found by chance people were using this little messaging thing they built over here really for games, but they weren't using it for games. They were actually using it in a kind of enterprise setting. And then they went and developed that. It turns out it was a really big company, and they sold it for billions of dollars, right? Great exit. Didn't even start there. It started in games, and they kept iterating on the games, and their games were terrible, but their Slack was quite good. So much though that Slack is like a noun now, right? It's not a verb, it's both. So I Slack someone, or it is Slack. So watch the money. Cash is king. Don't overspend. Don't overhire. Get to where you've really got traction and things are picking up. And then people will give you money to spend and say, go spend, $300 million on marketing. Go do it now. But get there, thoughtfully.
Well, Kevin, what great advice. This has been amazing. I think for those who want to listen to the podcast in full, it's not every day that you get to talk to someone who not only has had so many successes over so many decades, but someone who is there kind of in the beginning in a way, who's someone who actually knows Bill Gates and actually knew Steve Jobs and knew them when they weren't these figures that we look up to, They were just young people trying to figure it out, trying to save their company in some ways. And of course, it's easy to look back 30 years and through the 2020, hindsight and see the big success winners. But in the early days, they all struggled, and they probably had a smaller ecosystem, less opportunity, less coverage like you have today, and less awareness overall. And so I think that early group of people like yourself that made it, the young people today can really learn a lot. And I really appreciate you coming on the pod, sharing those pearls of wisdom. And I really hope these teams will take some of that wisdom to heart.
Yeah, it's always good to talk to you, and to keep up the good work with MatchStar. Hopefully we'll do another one when you're ready, and there's so much more to talk about.
That sounds great, Kevin. And where can people find you if they're interested? Where do you show up?
KevinSurace.com. It's literally just www.kevinsurace.com. And
perfect.
I'm there, and my LinkedIn is there, and you can LinkedIn message me if you'd like. I do answer my messages.
And for those who don't know how to use the internet, just go to Google and type in his name, and there's going to be a lot of search results. So I'll just leave it at that. All right, Kevin, thank you so much. I really appreciate you joining us. Cheers.
Such a pleasure.
The Venture to Victory podcast is provided by MatchStar Venture Search. If you're interested in any of our open executive roles or need help sourcing world-class talent for your company, check out our website at matchstar.com.